On this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, we talked to Daniel Dukeman. Daniel's an experienced firefighter that's had years in the truck, I guess you could say, but he's also been dealing with PTSD. This conversation gets kind of serious and kind of deep, and sometimes it gets a little heavy. But I think it's important that we listen to Daniel's story, learn how he's dealing with PTSD and learning how to overcome it, because we can use those skills in our lives, whether it's with our friends, our family, or even with ourselves. I know the audio sounds kind of terrible. I was trying to use a different mic, and it turned out to be worse than what I thought when I sampled it originally. Anyways, hope you get past the sound and just listen to the content. This is a great episode with Daniel Dukeman on the Range Minded Podcast. Welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. This is Steve, your usual host. If I can even talk, it's kind of late and I'm tired. It's not really that late. Nick's not with us tonight. He's hanging out with his son at a baseball game, which he probably should be doing other than hanging out with us. But I do have a guest with us tonight. This is Daniel Dukeman's with us. And Daniel, I saw you on a live with Nick on Instagram, on one of his many Instagram lives, and I thought, man, I've got to get you on the show to kind of share your story and kind of your mission in life. Let the listeners know a little bit about you, Daniel.
Yeah. So again, Daniel Dukeman. I started out back in 2001, right out of high school, went into a career in firefighting and did 13 years career,
Wow.
Volunteered on my days off and then took a little break from that. And then ended up right back in it about 7 years ago. 4.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with PTSD and kind of have gone through the process of understanding how that works and how that affects a person and healing and recovering from that. And so a big part of my journey with PTSD now has been just that I continue to want to help people. So, about 4 months ago, my mission changed in life and I decided that I was going to do that. So
nice.
Here we are.
So sometimes, when we think about PTSD, like normal civilians, we think of, guys getting back from combat or maybe police officers. But I think a lot of times that's kind of unjust, right? Because firefighters and even people in car accidents where they suffer too.
Yes, that's correct. It only takes one event. In my case, it was multiple, and a lot of folks out there that suffer, it is multiple events, especially our first responders, our firefighters, police, military, EMTs, paramedics. And the amount of people suffering from that is just staggering. And I always kind of thought this will never be me, and then once, of course, it is. And having gone through that process, I want nothing more out of life than to help people to avoid those pitfalls that I went through and to best be able to cope and get care.
Sure. What made you realize that, man, I've got a problem and I need to help myself so I can help other people?
So at one point there was a particularly bad call, and there's been many of them, but I just woke up the next day and it was obvious that I was not right. Like I'd kind of been down and had some of those symptoms in the past, but just, pushed them back away, worked around it, and thought I was dealing with the traumatic events. But on that particular day, it was quite apparent that nothing was right in my life. And so much so that my ex-wife, at that time, we were still married, and she noticed. And of course I was, being the typical man and typical people in society with this, where we just say we're okay. And right. After a few days of it obviously not being okay, I kind of instinctually knew what it was. And kind of started like actually looking at it at that perspective, that this probably is what it is. What are, did the kind of the Google search thing and go, gosh, I check all these boxes. And Karen was was really strong and firm about that I needed to get help. Of course, I didn't want to, because I thought that it was a weakness. It was a badge that we had to wear around that was just a label,
Sure.
like you're a terminal cancer patient or something. So, I resisted that. After a week or so, I did finally make a call, found a therapist that specializes in PTSD treatment, and set up an appointment and started that process.
Was it tough? Like you feel like as a firefighter or first responder, you kind of feel like that's just part of the job. But was it tough to really admit that to yourself that, yeah, I've got to do something?
Oh, absolutely. And for me, and I think for a lot of others, the hardest step that we'll take in this journey of recovery and healing is to just admit that you need help.
Right.
And that's like part one of it. But the hardest part is asking for the help and taking that step, because it's uncomfortable, it's vulnerable. In a lot of us in these careers, we are the strength when people are at their weakest. So even though at the time of an emergency, we may be putting on that best face that we are the strongest and bravest and good to go, and we push those things aside during the call, oftentimes we don't let them come back out and reprocess them properly.
Yeah.
And we fear being vulnerable to do that because we perceive it as a weakness. And the truth is, it's not a weakness. Your ability to feel emotion, and I don't want to single anyone out, but especially men, this is very hard. And coming from another man, our ability to feel emotion, we all do it, but our natural response is to put it away, to just repress that feeling and be a man, or what we perceive to be a man. You cannot be any stronger of a man than being willing to say, hey, I need help. This didn't sit well with me. This incident is affecting me. And to be able to do that is absolutely crucial to recovering from this, because if we're not willing to ask for the help and get the proper care, we're going to sit in this pit of misery forever.
Yeah, I remember this has been years ago. My brother-in-law was an EMT. Now he's a sheriff's deputy. But this particular call, he was the first one on scene to a terrible accident. It was a mom. She didn't see the train. It was kind of a blind intersection with these railroad tracks that just out in the middle of the country down here in southeast Idaho. Mm-hmm. The problem is the Snake River was down train, I guess, from this intersection. And I mean, you can imagine how terrible that was for him. And she had,
absolutely.
She had her two kids in the car with her. And my brother-in-law, he's seen a lot of stuff, in his professional career. But seeing how that particular call affected him, it was tough, right? Seeing kids in a way that is just that nobody wants to even imagine. And it did take its toll on him, and he eventually did go seek some help that, the county facilitated that for him. But you could see like the weight that was on his shoulders those first few weeks after that call. And it's kind of unfair for us as civilians. We just look at police officers and firefighters like they're invincible. And we forget that they're just everyday human beings like us. They just have a different job. So it's kind of unfair for us to get all angry and frustrated with you guys when you're responding to a call, because man, you guys have a lot of stuff to deal with.
Well, and so much of it too. And I don't know that I've really had a lot of people get angry. There's people that are definitely in times of frustration when they're stressed out, when a loved one is, not in a good way. But so many of the firefighters out there in this country, over 90%, I want to say it's around 95, 96%, are volunteer.
Wow.
They choose to do this. They choose to give their time. So a lot of times they're just out being that everyday normal citizen, just like most people. They're at their kid's birthday party or having a family dinner or doing something, and that call comes out and they drop what they're doing and they jump right into firefighter mode or EMT mode.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to turn that off after a bad call and to reintegrate back into whatever you were doing. So a lot of it, even with the guys who are doing this for their shifts, it's hard to come back. It takes time to turn off what you saw and not be a firefighter for a day or two and be a dad or a mom or whatever it is that your life looks like outside of your work. And those things are all cumulative. So they build up over time, and, we process and deal with them oftentimes in the wrong ways. For me, I drank heavily when I was not at work. And I always kind of felt like that was just an okay thing, and I wasn't really doing anything bad until eventually there was a point where I noticed that I got done with a bad call, and my first thought was, I got to get home so I can have a drink. But it was never a drink. It turned into multiple drinks, and usually I would find a way to kill the whole bottle. And when we turn to those things, it numbs it for a while, and we think that it's helping it, but it's actually making it worse in so many ways.
My dad used to say, drinking never washes away your problems; it only irrigates them.
That's right.
My dad always told me. Yeah. So are there some indicators that maybe some of our listeners may have experienced something, but they just haven't realized it or haven't admitted it to themselves? Are there some like key indicators that you've learned or seen, or maybe that affected you? They're like, yeah, this is one of the indicators that PTSD is a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And these are even of value to spouses or family members when you notice changes in that loved one that may be dealing with some PTSD type things. Any like sudden irritability, depression, seeing that they've kind of lost interest in things that used to bring them joy, hobbies, spending time with the family or kids, isolation. That was a big one for me. I did not want to hang out with anybody, and I often felt like I was alone in a room full of people, so I didn't want to be in that room. Increased drug and alcohol use, and just really it can be any pretty broad range, but those are kind of the key things. But anything that's out of the norm, and it's not abnormal after a bad call to see these things for a day, 2 days, a week, maybe 2 weeks. But really, once you start getting past that that 1 week point, it's time to start looking that maybe there's more, and you need to talk to somebody. And sometimes that can just be, talking to a coworker. And I think a big part of that is we have to feel comfortable with those people to be able to do that. And we should, because we trust our coworkers with our lives on the regular. There's a closer bond for many of us in the emergency services with our coworkers than anywhere else. They're closer than our best friends. Sometimes they're closer than our own family, because they are that second family. We've experienced these incredibly hard things, these things that most people will never experience. The vast majority of the population will never have gone into a structure fire and gone through a burning building and put it out while there's fire falling from the ceiling and all the things that are associated with that.
Yeah.
And we rely on each other. we always have each other's back in those situations, and literally are protecting each other's lives. So that's always my first step. And like as a department, we've worked really hard to break that stigma down, and to actually be willing to, hey, I'm noticing that you're not your normal self. Is there anything you want to talk about? Like, can I help? And kind of being a little bit more proactive than waiting for somebody to ask for help. But oftentimes people are more comfortable talking with coworkers. There is some stigma there, but if not, there's lots of good mental health professionals out there that specialize in this stuff, and they are great to work with.
Yeah.
You do have to get to know them, so there is a little bit of being vulnerable and talking about hard things that you don't want to share with your own family with a complete stranger. But
Yeah, which I
it
think
is
is,
all part of the process.
and it's sad because when we think about talking to a psychiatrist or something like that, that we're admitting that we're sick in some way, or we're broken, or you say it's maybe being vulnerable, but I think sometimes we think of it way more negative
Mhm.
than it really is, and it's not like we're not broken. We just need help, and
Yeah,
and
and
that's a big step to get away from for some people, I think.
it absolutely is. It was a big step for me, and one of the things that I've learned, is I've been going and seeing a therapist regularly for coming up on, I don't know, 4.5, 5 years now. Um, I've learned that people come through those doors to talk to the other therapists in the office that are all walks of life. I mean, you have anything from teenagers to old ladies to everywhere in between. And while your therapist can't really talk to you about their patients, like they deal with everything. And essentially they are like a coach in a way. They're not telling you what to do. They're just simply asking questions that help you to reframe things, and you already have the answers. They're just blocked because of the trauma. And so they're just simply asking the questions in a way that allow you to release those answers on your own. And that can be for anything. It doesn't have to be for PTSD. There's people who go to the therapist just to talk about, the dinner they burnt the other night. Like some of the stuff that people go in there for, it seems pretty minuscule compared to what others do. But they're really their whole purpose, their whole existence is to just help people regardless of the situation.
Right.
So it is actually quite a normal thing. We just always look at it as, like, for me, I was like, whoa, I'm going to go to the therapist. I guess that means I'm crazy now. Well, we're all crazy in our own way, you know. So
Yeah.
so if you reframe what crazy is, it doesn't sound that bad.
So you talk about kind of battling with this. And maybe not you in general, but do you feel like there might be people that it kind of ebbs and flows, it comes and goes, or is it something that's just there and then you just work your way through it?
I think it can be both. There's coworkers that I've had that, kind of got a lot thrown at them right away earlier in their career, and so they ended up going and getting treatment relatively soon, and they noticed the effects of it right away. For me, it took a much longer time because by the time I started treatment, I had like around 17 years, like 16, 17 years of experience, and all these things that happened during that time to actually truly go through and process. And so it took more time. So there was definitely ups and downs. And my ex-wife noticed that, hey, there was sometimes where she was like, the day before you went to therapy, you were good. The morning you went there, you were good. And then you came home and it was like it wrecked your world. Well, you spend some time talking about things that suck, unfortunately. And again, this is just one angle of the treatments. I did this and I still do therapy. For me, they tried to do EMDR treatments, which is eye movement desensitization, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it works great. For me, it just wasn't quite enough because I had let things get so bad. And at one point, we found out that I had become kind of resistant to those treatments. So for me, the next stop was psychedelics, and there's a a whole nother stigma around that. I thought that was just the wildest thing I'd ever heard of, and I grew up in a place that had a pretty, I don't know if you would call it healthy, but there was the drug culture was known where I grew up, and it still seemed like an odd thing to me that people are doing this for fun and then they're going to give me a small dose that's supposed to help me. But the research on that has been phenomenal, and the results for me have been life-changing.
That's amazing, because you're right, because some people see, psychedelics, man, that can't be good, or there's a lot of negative connotations to it, but there is a benefit.
Yep, and it's quite remarkable because they've even found, like with the I do ketamine treatments, and they found with those that for whatever reason it kind of takes away your desire to drink, which is helpful because that was I wasn't an alcoholic. I drank heavily in order to suppress those things. Well, when you kind of just become indifferent to whether or not it's there or whether or not you have it, suddenly I'm making a drink in the evening and I have 2 sips and I'm like, I don't really care if I finish this. So that was helpful in that benefit, but they're also using it for drug addiction and all the other things that go along with PTSD, the depression, the anxiety, and they're having incredible results. And that's not just with the ketamine. I mean, they're also seeing similar things with psilocybin mushrooms, LSD. And MDMA. And then there's also some other things out there that are much more plant-based that I don't really have a lot of knowledge on, but like ayahuasca is a big one. And
I heard a lot of people are using ayahuasca right now. Like, I think Joe Rogan talked about it once on his show, and then all of a sudden it's like everybody's wanting to use it.
Yeah, and I haven't really had the conversations, but I do know some people who have done it, but it is a pretty fascinating thing, and they do claim that it changed things for them and really helped them to process, which is great because that's the ultimate goal, is that we can reintegrate into our normal lives and enjoy our lives again. We can enjoy being around our family and our friends and be able to do the jobs that we fell in love with when we started them, and continue to serve and help our communities.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're still on the job, or?
Yeah, so I still am. I'm kind of in an odd situation now. I always think anyway, but I know it isn't. It's like this in other places. I work for a city in northern Utah, and because we're a small community, we're the paid staff on the fire department. But my primary job is public works. I run a water system and a sewer system, take care of the roads, the parks, with the cemetery. We do the burials, and then in the middle of all that,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, just in the middle of all that, at any moment we go and we go on a fire or a medical call, and then eventually get back to whatever we were working on.
But you might not be too far from me then.
I think I'm just a couple hours from you. I'm up in Lewiston, just right on the border. So.
Oh yeah, yep, nice. Yeah, it's a nice area down there, actually.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean, so it's kind of different now. But one of the reasons I took the job was because while I was out of fire for a couple of years, my ex-wife and I had bought a grocery store over in central Nebraska, and we learned a lot. and realized that we were not successful in that business venture. So we were able to sell it and move on and be okay. But that gave me an opportunity to get back into this because we had been looking for work. And I missed fire. I missed that camaraderie with the other firefighters. But I also knew, like, at this point I had some young kids and I wanted to be around and not be gone for days or weeks on end. And this seemed like a good fit. So I still get to enjoy it. And of course, did have that moment where everything caught up to me. But that treatment is critical. And it's such a huge part of my story. Even down to I have a service dog for PTSD that I got during the pandemic, and she's phenomenal. She's a dog when she's at home and just does dog things, and you put on that vest and she changes, and really helped me quite a bit when I was having problems with the high anxiety and stressfulness of being in public or in crowded situations. And the work that they do is great. She also was they pick up a lot of stuff just by instinct, but wakes me up when I have night terrors, which is awesome, because my ex-wife was always afraid that I was going to punch her or hurt her when I was having a night terror, and she was afraid to wake me up. So, I've kind of experienced this broader spectrum of the treatments, and it's allowed me to kind of gain some fascination with everything that is out there.
Right.
And really that, what I found was that most people tend to feel alone when they're in these things. And I've talked to a lot of people that have reached out to me and have told me how alone they feel or have felt. And some of them spend years like that. And there's no need to do that. There's so many good options out there for treatment and help. And, I've been able to connect with a lot of people through having the service dog, which has been wonderful.
That's awesome.
So
there's something about dogs, man. They open people's heart.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And what kind of got the ball rolling for me in this, it literally was a dog. I would, just having done this line of work for so long, I don't sleep great at night. So a few years ago, kind of in the middle of this PTSD treatment, I started driving Uber down in Salt Lake City on the weekends.
Oh, yeah.
And I would drive at night, and I would get all kinds of questions about this dog that was riding with me. And it was COVID at the time, so they weren't letting anybody ride in the front seat. So it was like perfect time to bring her along and finish her training. And it started all these conversations that were amazing conversations. And I didn't really pick up on it initially, other than just like, that was an incredible conversation. They were often really difficult for me to talk about because I was still in that process of healing from all this trauma.
Yeah.
But what I found was people saw my emotion and felt what I was talking about. And then they talked about family members that had suffered from this or had taken their lives. And that just hit me because I was at that point at, when I had been diagnosed, and I'm thankful. I'm so beyond thankful that my ex pushed me to get treatment, and that I did, and that I was willing to take that step and finally just say, I need help, and actually go get it. Because you hear these stories and it just pulls at your heartstrings, and those stories are everywhere. And there's just, it's not what we want to see. And we want to change that stigma around it, that it's okay to ask for help, and that it really truly is not weakness. I can speak just with absolute truth that I am stronger now than I was when I was 18 and got into the fire service. I've developed the tools and the skill sets to better deal with the trauma and to work through things and to be able to be comfortable talking with my coworkers about it and with other firefighters and first responders and even complete strangers.
Yeah.
And it's so important that societally that we change this, that we're willing to be more open to it, that it's an okay thing. And what everyone is doing out there to help their communities, that, you know, don't feel bad for them, be thankful for them, and share that appreciation for them. Because telling them that, I feel like telling them that you're sorry that they had to deal with that bad call, to me, it doesn't really help because we already feel bad about it.
Yeah.
But
But it's just
maybe we're
you need the
better to just
positive
say thank
support.
you. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
just better to say thank you, or, you know, what you guys do is amazing. And there is a lot of that we do get and always have. And I'm beyond grateful for that support that I've always seen in my career, um, through the past 19 years. And, you know, I think that to make this a norm, and understanding that it is an okay thing, and it is a process, but being strong enough and willing to get that help, um, and the command staff, with the fire departments, law enforcement, everybody being more than willing to watch out for their people and be aware of their situation, be aware of your people and know them well enough that you can identify when something's wrong, but also be that leader that they trust so instinctually and so strongly that they're willing to talk to you. Whether they come up to you on their own and say, "Hey, I have a problem," or if you come up to them and just say, "You know, that was a bad call. How are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help?" Um, and just being available, because in the end, when we always talk about being a family, we are a family. And so the best thing we can do is to help each other in every way possible. And this is kind of the invisible wounds that you can't see necessarily on the outside.
Yeah, you kind of touched on something that is kind of painful, and I know a lot of the families that deal with it, but it's just to the point where people feel so desperate where they, where they do something terrible and take their own
Mhm.
life or something. That is so sad. And if there's a way that we can, I hope that if anybody ever felt that way, man, I kind of tear up about it, that they could feel like they could call me or call you or just anybody,
Mhm.
just to ask for help, because man, that's such a sad situation. Let's just say every family has been impacted somehow by suicide, and it just sucks that people feel like that's the way out.
Yeah, and it's not the way out at all. I mean, I was definitely at a point where I thought it was, and then I realized as I was trying to figure out a way to not hurt anybody in my life as I exited this life, I realized there really was no way to do that. There was no way to to do what I thought was the right choice, which obviously wasn't,
Right.
without hurting my family, without involving more first responders that were going to come to that call or look for me or any number of scenarios. There was no way to do that without profoundly affecting so many people. And
Right.
it's more than just your family. I mean, it's so far reaching. And um the light at the end of the tunnel, I've found, is so much brighter. Um,
That's awesome.
life is good now, and I can promise anybody out there that if you go all in on getting the help you need, and I mean all in, um, you'll see that too. We can't, as first responders, we cannot help each other. We can't help other people if we don't help ourselves. And if we don't help ourselves and keep ourselves on a healthy plane, there's no way we can continue to help others. We'll just deplete everything we have. We'll drain our fuel tank and just be like an empty car sitting on the side of the road. We have to do things that refuel us, and getting help is a big part of that. Regularly discussing these things with coworkers or a therapist is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a very empowering thing.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's awesome. Are there some skills that you've learned through your journey that kind of help you avoid some of those negative thoughts or feelings?
Yeah, so a lot of times they talk about grounding, and there's a ton of exercises out there that you can do for that. But essentially what that's doing, if you start to feel kind of amped up, or the anxiety level, stress level is really heightening to where you're not really aware of anything around you but what that stress is or that anxiety is, there's a lot of grounding techniques out there that are very much they're set up that they help you refocus and recenter on where you're at right now. Like a real basic one is just to just clench your fists as hard as you can and count to 10, and then release them. And then, like, when they feel normal again, or after 10 seconds, clench them again for 10 seconds and release them. And just continuing to do that until you feel more connected and calm to your situation. There's breathing exercises to, inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, and continue to repeat that until you're calmed. Taking mental note of things in your surroundings, 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can hear, and maybe 1 thing that you could taste if you put your tongue on it. And what that does, it just causes you to think about something else momentarily. And then when you refocus, you're able to take care of what's in front of you. And there is some other techniques that are, I don't know that they're really meditation, but they're several minute long exercises, like 10-minute long exercises. And there's just a wealth of stuff on the internet for grounding exercises. And a lot of it's just picking what works for you. Some people will carry just a coin in their pocket, and they will rub that when they're having an anxiety attack, and they'll think about the surface of that coin and the texture of it, and maybe how that coin has changed over time in their pocket, where there's some scratches because it's been rubbing against keys, that sort of thing. So there is a lot out there to just kind of get you out of that immediate high stress pinned moment.
Interesting. Well, man, I appreciate this conversation. Now, is there something that you'd like to tell the listeners, or some advice, or anything? What's your message? If you could give out your message.
So my absolute message would just be that this, while it seems hard and it seems like something that is not able to work through for some of you, it certainly is. And I would encourage you to absolutely take that first step and ask for help. I would also say that if there's a loved one in your life that you're concerned about, check in on them. Ask them how they're doing, and don't be afraid to, of course, from a loving place, really just make sure that they're doing okay. And if they're not, guide them to help, and ensure them that it's okay to not be okay, and that it will get better. And I think in the emergency services, we all need to just continue to do that as well. We need to check in on our brothers and sisters and make sure that they're doing okay. And of course, my big mission in this is to just get out and get awareness and help people get into the treatments that they need. I make myself as available as I possibly can. If people want to reach out and talk to me, I am on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I do spend most of my time on Instagram. My handle is Dan R. Dukeman. Of course, if you just look up Daniel Dukeman, I think it'll get you there too. But I do post quite regularly and try to talk about these things and some little tips and things to think about as we enter the process of healing in that journey. And most certainly just know that you're not alone and that you're loved and that the help is out there, and it is most certainly worth getting. You're worth the effort. You're worth the treatment. You've put in so much to dedicate your life to helping others, and there's just not anything wrong with helping yourself and seeking out help for yourself.
Awesome. That is the exact reason why I wanted to get you on the show is just to let people know the very thing that you just said, that if they could take away anything from this whole podcast, it was that last 2 minutes. Because there's a lot of people out there, I think, that are just carrying this weight with them everywhere they go that they don't need to carry. That it's okay to let it go. And I think even outside the first responder community, just in the civilian side, there's a lot of struggle that I think, men and women both just feel like they need to carry that they don't need to. And it's holding us back from our true potential, I think.
Absolutely. And, it really goes for anybody out there that is struggling. Like, every one of you is uniquely you. And that is like such a special gift. And that right there gives you so much value. So
Right.
Don't be afraid to get the help that you need. You're not alone. There is so many just like you, and there is such a community, and I'm hoping to build that community even more, that we can all come together and help each other in a far greater way than is currently being done out there.
Awesome, man. You have a noble quest, and I'm excited I'm excited to watch you to go through this, and I'm here to help you every possible step of the way, because like I say, it's a noble quest, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve.
Well, awesome. Is there anything else you want to let people know? We already talked about like how to find you on your Instagram and TikTok and such. Is any last words?
Just feel free to reach out to me anytime. I also am looking to go and do speaking events and motivational speaking. If there's anything I can help anybody with, any group, anything like that, this is really about helping others and helping us all to grow together and to heal our wounds so we can be stronger. So if there's anything I can do, definitely reach out, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you spending this last few minutes with me. It's been awesome. I'm
definitely. I appreciate the opportunity.
I want to tell you that I'm proud of you, but it almost sounds
Thank you.
I'm not an old man. We're about the same age, but I can still be proud of you, man. It's awesome.
You can, and I'll take it. Thank you.
Well, awesome. Well, again, look him up on Instagram and reach out to him. Honestly, folks, if you feel like you're struggling with something, reach out to him. And if you don't want to reach out to him, reach out to me, or don't be scared to ask for help. It's important.
Yep, definitely is.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye. All right. See ya. Hey, gang. Thanks for hanging out for this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. We really do appreciate the amount of time that you spend with us. We think it's awesome. If you have any questions or concerns, or maybe an idea for a guest or a specific topic, go ahead and email us at rangeminded@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if you like what you heard, go ahead and give us a good like and share, because we want to really grow the community. After all, we are stewards of the Second Amendment. Anyways, we hope to see you here again next time. Peace out.